there are just so many parallels back in history. What you were scared of the printing press? Yeah, I mean, like looking back, that's so pathetic. You wanted to talk about the writer's strike.
I do. I would like to talk about the writer's strike. This is something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. As a person that is generally super supportive of unions, I've been in some unions. I've seen that there is things that are both positive and negative about being in a union, but for creative people, it seems particularly important. I love seeing people strike. It just brings joy to my heart as a spiritual anti-capitalist. And but what I think is interesting and why I think it bookends really well with what we do here at Team Futurism is that I think it touches on two things that are one thing that is futurism that has come to pass, and another that is the ghost of futurism's future. One is streaming services and how they have changed the landscape of art. And I think that goes for both visual and audio art forms. But in particular, this is the Writers Guild strike, and we're going to talk about the video aspect of that. From what I understand, I've seen that one of the big reasons that they're striking is because there is no such thing as residual income anymore off of a writing job, right? So if you take a writing job at Netflix, you help them write a 12 episode series, they're going to pay you an amount of money for that. And in traditional broadcast format, it would have been you would have been getting residuals when that show went into syndication, which would be, as you know, a couple of years later, it's not on the air anymore, but they air it on some kind of auxiliary cable channel or something, and you get paid, whatever, like a nominal amount of money every time that episode airs that you helped to write. But that's not the way that the streaming services are structuring their deals anymore. They're structuring it to where they're paying a flat fee, and they're just kind of like, and streaming services aren't transparent about the amount of people that are watching the shows, either to the people creating those shows, including the actors, the artists, the writers, anybody involved. Like it's pretty opaque the way that they're collecting money from this stuff.
The streaming services completely did change the game because they restructured those contracts. You're totally right. And then all of a sudden the studios were in a different position. And that's kind of partly why we are where we are right now, because they're like, wait, the streaming services don't have to pay that much for all this. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I have cool. I want to play a Scott Galloway clip here in a second. Okay. He's gonna be a little flamethrower that we can respond to.
Great.
He has like an ultra hot take on this, I think, in my opinion. One of my thoughts, though, just to get my generalities out of the way here, I think that writers have always gotten the short end of the stick in Hollywood. They always will. And that's just something that I think partly I'm gonna like blame the audience here and I'm gonna blame culture at large, because when you see a movie advertised, it's all about the face of the actor or actress. That is what is selling tickets. And you're going to go see this movie, and I'm guilty of this. I'm going to be like, wait, Brad Pitt's in this. It's probably a pretty good movie, right? Like, he's not going to be in that shitty of a movie. It's probably like default, that's going to be true, right?
Yeah.
Then you're like, director. Oh shit, Martin Scorsese directed this. I'll go see that. I don't really care who's in it. I don't care who wrote it, whatever. It's a Scorsese film. It's probably pretty good, right? That. Who, other than me, because I actually do this guy write screenplays, who other than like literal screenwriters are like, oh my God, that was written by like J.J. Abrams. I'm going to go see that. Literally nobody. So that
oh my God, it's a Nolan Finkelstein.
That is the cultural problem. And it's what Hollywood knows and no one wants to talk about, is no one gives a fuck who wrote the thing. Unless you're like a writer director like the Coen brothers. This is where we almost need a cultural shift, which we're shifting away from this. But like, imagine a world where writers were the paramount superhero of the film industry. where like we did grow up saying like the first credit on any movie is written by so and so, and then like the first thing that drops in terms of promotion is an interview of that writer, and they talk about like where it comes from. I mean, there is a way to actually shift the culture that people cared about who wrote the thing. That's not happening, and it's probably not going to happen. That is what would need to happen to really fundamentally address the ultimate fact that this particular writer's strike aside, writers do historically and always will get the short end of the stick. I think that that's a broader thing. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think that I'm seeing that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing complicated about that is the way that scripts are sold, which is like, scripts can just be sold and then rewritten, and the writer that rewrites the script is the one that ends up with their name on the script. So like that's kind of a convoluted process that scripts sometimes go through to get to their final iteration, which sometimes robs the initial writer of all of the credit in general.
Totally true. In my culturally shifted world, that wouldn't happen. Because you would care who wrote it, and you wouldn't see it if some like no-name script doctor came in and doctored it, and that would be a scandal in my world. If like they didn't show who the real writer was, that would be a scandal, and it would be all over the Hollywood Reporter. This is my fantasy.
I love it. And Peter, just for the audience, what is remind us what you do as a creative?
I mean, I'm a writer.
Right.
Like this hits me personally. Yes.
In this utopian world that you've constructed, where do you fit in?
I have sold some screenplays. I've worked with some producers. I've sold some screenplays, not in any like big level, but I've made some.
Yeah, for our 45 audience members, please go check out Peter's work. It's phenomenal. Both his work in print and his screenplays. Also, we made a movie together. Man, Peter's he's left the nest, guys. He's flying on his own two wings.
That was a bit of a teaser, but I absolutely want to have a full episode where we talk about our movie, because we made a movie together.
It does, and it's
feature film, and
it is a futurist movie.
It holds up too. Yeah, I mean it's literally a no budget film, so hold up your expectations.
It holds up. It's like 2 years old. It fucking better hold up still.
It seems like it was a long time ago. Okay, I'm gonna pivot here.
Pivot.
I wanna play a clip, incidentally, from the Pivot podcast. This is Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. Do you listen to them? I forget. You don't? Okay, so I'm gonna play a clip. This is Scott Galloway. He's gonna rant for about 2 minutes. He's gonna say some things that this was a couple weeks ago. This dropped, and it upset a fuck ton of people. Everyone on Twitter was like raging at him, especially like the writers. So this is gonna be a little bit insulting, and it's good, and he might be utterly right. So I want to get your takes. Okay, here we go.
This is a dream come true for the studios. An enforced multilateral pause in spending as they recalibrate and have cloud cover to come back with fewer employees. The union here, the writers' union, has so badly miscalculated the power dynamic here. And the studios are going to slowly but surely, quietly, they are going to break their backs. And this is going to end really poorly for the writers. It's going to end. I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that the studio heads got together and said, piss off and upset the writers union so they go on strike and force all of us to stop spending and producing content. Because every individual is like, I got 8 shows I haven't gotten to yet that I'd like to watch. So this is going to be remnant. This is the information age coal miner strike in the UK. It's going to end really poorly for the writers. They are totally, and all this virtue signaling with stars that make $10 and $20 million a year showing up and pretending that they stand with their brothers and sisters. I just think it's hilarious. You're going to see this union come back to the table, and the studios are going to just do what used to happen to me when I was trying to raise money through the 90s with VCs. They're going to grin fuck them. They're going to say, that's interesting. Writers are really important to us. We should keep talking. And they're going to do nothing. And then when a bunch of the writers that are going to be replaced by AI anyways, start thinking, I can't pay my rent, and start putting pressure on the union to settle, the union's going to end up with a worse deal than they had going into this.
But I agree with you. I was a bunch of writers and actors have written me, and I'm like, I don't think you have leverage here.
Damn. He could be right. I mean, I don't have enough of an insider kind of view on the industry to know whether he's right or not, but I could sense that being right. I mean, it's not like capitalism is like slowly sliding towards equity. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly. Yeah.
Like I was just talking with a friend of mine the other day who works for a law firm, and he's like a legal aid, and I was like, well, what's the situation with like AI? I would imagine that, you know, being a legal aid and probably even really being a lawyer in the next 20 years is going to become relatively obsolete because it's procedural. It's not like it's not like there's no artistic flair to it. Well, I mean, to some stuff there is, and he was like, oh, we already use ChatGPT. We like use it for like analyzing contracts and stuff. And I was like, oh shit. So the writing's already on the wall for your job, and it's only a matter of time before lawyers too. And like, unfortunately, man, like some of the AI art that I've seen and some of the stuff, the prose that I've read, I'm like, it's not that good yet, but it's so new. It's going to be able to synthesize ideas that are going to kind of tickle parts of us that like only generational talents were able to touch on before, I think, unfortunately. And I mean, maybe fortunately for the entertainer, you know, or for the entertained, I should say. Yeah, I mean, I've heard that. That's the second time I've heard that take where they're like, oh, the studios are stoked about this. They're thrilled because they don't need people to keep writing shows. They've got a ton of this stuff already in the barrel, and they could use a little break. And yeah, I don't know. I wonder what I should have done a little more research. I wonder what they're asking for. I wonder what the writers are actually asking for. Do you know?
I mean, broadly it's more money, but the interesting note is that they want to always receive credit. They want the byline and they want the credit, even if AI did the first draft or the final edit, or if any AI was like AI, they do not want AI to receive credit.
Right.
Totally makes sense. Like I totally get it. I mean, I do think this is a little bit like we have to lean into this technology as artists, I think.
Yeah.
Like
I think so too.
Grimes is doing. I mean, Grimes is making it so that like, you know, anybody can use her voice to make a song, and she just like gets 50% credit if the song makes any money. That's like the deal that she's making. That's what writers have to do. I think writers are prepared to do this. And I think that we're like, at least the younger ones of us are probably excited to do that sort of a thing. But it's the people who are right now in a situation like writers in Hollywood where it's your day job. Easy for me to talk because like writing's like my hobby. You know, I'd love to like make it my day job, but like it's just hard to do. When you're there and when you made it to that level, it's your job, you know? And so they're looking at this differently. And I think that situation might actually cloud the reality about what they're facing, because this isn't like what are the possibilities here? Oh my God, this is cool. My hobby could be like augmented like into the like just shot into the future. It's like, oh my God, my job is going to be lost.
It's going to be a lot of this, man, in the next like 10 to 15 years, where there's like the dying gasp of an industry, and the people that are embedded that have spent their entire lives developing the skill set necessary for that industry. Yeah, it's going to be really hard for those people to see when it's actually over. You know?
At the very end of that little clip I played, Kara Swisher says, I don't see what leverage writers have in this situation. Right. I think that she's totally right. Again, going back to my dream scenario, I think that if writers were well known, and if like people went to see movies because of the name on the screen who wrote the thing, that would be their leverage. That would be huge. But they don't have that. You know, so like literally, what is their leverage? There are a ton of people who could fill those shoes, who would do that job for less money. Me.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Do you know how much money I've made? I'm not going to say, but like writing screenplays, I mean, I spend more money on coffee each year. Let's just put it that, you know.
Totally.
I would do one of those jobs for like a fifth of the price of those people do. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely. Yeah.
It's going to be sick, like the bitter irony of both of us, like coming of age as artists, right? As our ability to do anything meaningful with it is eclipsed by artificial intelligence. Same thing for me, where I'm like, as a musician, I think about that all the time, where I'm like, oh, music is pretty formulaic as it is. Right? Like writing almost seems like a more abstract art form, and it's being kind of dominated by Chat GPT, like the earliest versions of Chat GPT. I'm like, oh man, the music is gonna fall quick and hard, I think, and then I think one of the things though is like I'll kind of bookend on this so we can pivot to something else, but I'm hoping that as we move into an age where mass-produced culture is produced increasingly by machines, that we have a lot of niche microeconomic and like micro ecosystems of people that like handmade stuff because it's handmade, maybe not because it's the best, and that we have that now. And I'm hoping that continues to expand, where the idea of artisanal whatever is something that's attractive to people just conceptually, where they're like, I would like to support human beings to make this art for me because it was made by a human. And I think that maybe in 50 years will be something where you're like, in all of the shit that's in your house, you're like, look, a person made this. It's like the one thing, and you're like, everyone's like, oh, wow, a person made that? It must have been really expensive. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, I hope that's how it goes. Otherwise,
I'm a big proponent of that, and I talk about that a lot. I have before ranted about that. I think that we also just need to be prepared for new art forms to arise. Movies have been around for maybe 100 years. I mean, yes, 100 years, but like 100 and change, not long. And 100 years ago, they weren't films like we know them to be today. The current iteration of films that we know and love, it's been around. It's barely been around at all.
20
years. And
just
and that was it was a technological shift that enabled that whole entire art form to come about.
Yeah.
Gonna happen again and again and again and again. Like there will, like, it's not like humans are gonna stop being creative just because all of a sudden, robots can do the same thing. But yeah, I think that this is just ultimately my pitch, and it always is, that I think that we just need to lean into being excited rather than scared of this stuff, because if you're scared of it, I don't know, it's just lame.
You're gonna get steamrolled.
There are just so many parallels back in history. What you were scared of the printing press. Yeah, like looking back, that's so pathetic. And it's the same thing here. If you're scared of ChatGPT because you're a Hollywood screenwriter, 20 years from now, that will be just pathetic to look back on and to have been that person, So just don't be scared of it. Just be stoked. That's literally that's the only thing you can do.
So are you scared or stoked about AI in politics? Let's talk about deepfakes.
Deepfakes. Yeah. So before we started today,
that one's a little scary on its face.
Yeah. I sent you a clip. Right. It was from The Office, and it was this hilarious clip where Steve Carell, the Steve Carell character, it's him, but his face is Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis' face is digitally imposed onto Steve Carell. It's like super well done. Where really it is, the head is like slightly too big or something. I don't know. It's like miles.
He's got kind of like his face is kind of stuck in like an eyes open kind of like stare a little bit too much.
But I was like watching it on Twitter on like a small phone screen, so like it read as
it
normal,
does. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And everything about this, and it was the clip where Steve Carell apparently is wearing a woman's suit, and so everyone is like, "Why are you wearing a woman's suit?" And he's like, "This is not a woman's suit." And then it kind of turns out, I guess it is. Anyways, Ron DeSantis doing this skit effectively.
There were these huge bins of clothes, and everybody was rifling through them like crazy, and I grabbed one, and it fit.
Everyone online, Jonathan Haidt and all of these people, they come out of the woodwork, they share this clip, and they're all like, oh my God, this is the end. Oh, we're so doomed for the next election cycle, like this sort of thing.
Boomers, dude.
I get it. There's a lot there's a lot to talk about there, but I do think that we should just settle down and enjoy this clip. And if you're not looking at this and be like, dude, this is hilarious, you're a lunatic.
You're gone.
not in touch with reality and the real world if you don't look at that and be like, dude, someone's funny. This is what the internet is for. It's for these weirdos to be funny and to play around with things. This is funny. So I do think that there's a conversation to be had about what could, fuck up the election, that sort of a thing. Maybe we can start here. Looking back on the 2020 election, didn't it come out that yes, Russia interfered, yes, bots, yes to a lot of those things, but they've done some analyses of how that actually impacted the outcomes of the election, and it was like, marginal, like kind of not really. I think that, again, I think that I've said this before, but that's my prediction for the next election cycle. Yes, this will be here. Yeah. Yes, this will have an impact. Same. Yes, some politician will kind of sort of have his name kind of sort of dragged through the mud wrongly because of this technology, but it's going to be marginal. I think that the ultimate impact will be marginal. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've unfortunately entered the vibe era of politics. I was listening to Left, Right, and Center yesterday. You ever listen to Left, Right, and Center?
No.
It's an NPR podcast. It's pretty nice. It's like, somebody from the center. I mean, it's NPR, so they lean left, but that moderates a discussion between someone kind of on the far left and somebody not on the far right, but on the right. So it's nice. And I think it was like Sarah Isgur is the right wing panelist, and she was saying this. Whenever the podcast came out, she was like, politics are kind of more vibe now, where it's like, I like that there's all these mechanical aspects to politics that are kind of irrelevant in an age where people are like, I like the way this guy I like the feel of this guy, because I think Donald Trump is an insane example of that, where I'm just baffled, he's been indicted in all of these criminal cases. He's been found guilty of sexual abuse, like just recently, like in civil court was found guilty, not of rape, but of sexual misconduct, basically. And I'm like, I was just having this conversation last night with somebody where I was like, you guys remember when Bill Clinton got his fucking dick sucked and like was like persona non grata for a decade? You know what I mean? Like did something that is not chill, but was consensual, ostensibly, and like morally wrong, but not particularly legally wrong. And now we've got somebody that's like a fucking basically hardened criminal, and people are like, yeah, but I just like this guy's fucking energy. I'm like, God damn, dude, like the internet has fully permeated our kind of cultural sensibilities, because I think that is part of what the internet does, is it kind of washes, you're like, well, facts, or how do you really know? And like deep fakes probably contribute to that kind of confusion, where you're looking at the world and thinking like, well, there's nothing solid that I can just be like, that's true, and I'm gonna hinge my decision making on this set of facts or principles. But as a person consistently shows up in media over and over and over again, you do get a sense of their vibe. You get a sense of their energy. You get a sense like, oh, would I like hanging out with this person or would I not? And that's crazy. That's how politics is like determined now. That to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think
So I don't think it's gonna matter. That was my take. Is that I don't think it's gonna matter at all. I think people who are like, I love fucking Ron DeSantis. This guy fucking hates the gays. And like, I don't hate the gays, but I kind of like that this guy does. You know what I'm just like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah, I have a smattering of opinions about a lot of these things. I'm trying to find something to push back on, just kind of for fun. But
sure.
So I mean, one thing that there's a lot of videos being shared on Twitter right now about, and it has been for years, the extremes on both sides, right? The extreme on the left and the extreme on the right, and polarization. And it all comes down to like, oh, social media is to blame, this sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. I do think that it's always good to step back, not blame the obvious thing, and look at broader trends. And because there are a lot of broader trends that are happening that may have made some of this kind of inevitable, technology aside. And one of them is like the decline in religion that is making it so that
Totally.
people in the Midwest are utterly freaked out for their identity.
Yeah.
And yes, I think technology has something to do with the decline in religion. It's also just kind of like inevitable as people become more educated, I think. So like I think that there a
What
lot
are
of
you trying to say, Peter?
a lot of the people who are in love with things like Trump phenomenons, it's that like cultural backlash of I'm scared of living in the godless society or whatever. And so I'm going to hold on to the guy who's like fighting for this strange culture that's dead, but I'm trying to pretend like it's not dead. There's some of that. I think there's a little bit of that's like animosity and fear driven that has nothing to do necessarily with online culture.
But it's so bizarre because Joe Biden is probably a way more fastidious and faithful, like American style Christian than Donald Trump ever
Well,
was.
You know what's interesting? No one ever talks
crazy?
about this really, but like I spent, a good portion of my childhood going to church every week and sometimes
Same.
2 times a week, right? And the people who are a pastor figure very often, I've went to many churches, they're very flamboyant, very car salesman-y, and those are the ones who like make it and draw big churches, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's not like the soft-spoken guy who just kind of like, plays by the rules. It's like the devil's gonna get you, son. That's that sort of a thing, or just like in general a car salesman pitch. If you were to just like put Joe Biden in a church on, stand him up and have him lead a congregation, and then have Trump do the same thing, and
I'd like you to turn to Corinthians 29:6. All right.
let's just like play out this hypothetical where they each give the same sermons every week, and to the same demographic of people. Trump's church would have twice the people. And it's just because of his presentation. And there's something about people who are drawn to religion. They really want that, well, I mean, one, it's entertaining. You don't want to go to church and be bored, especially in America, like the American Protestant. They really want to be entertained when they go to church.
Yeah.
It's just part of the whole like culture. I think that's like a large part of it. That explains that to me, that like Trump is acting like the pastor. He's acting like probably the guy that they go to see every Sunday morning.
Yeah, let me break the fourth wall of the church experience a little bit, which is that I think that most people think that going to church, people who go and people who don't go, is a religious experience, and it's meant to increase your spiritual connection with like a higher being or a source power or something like that. You you read A Brave New World, and there's a lot of these like dystopian futurist books have something built into the society that has to be built into every society, and it makes sense, which is that there's a cyclical tension release. Right. So it's like, I think most people go to church because it's a place where they can release the tension of the work week, the tension of the family experience. And when somebody is animated and big and has like a giant personality, it facilitates that more, because I think people are honestly there to, in a lot of ways, let go of inhibition and to be free emotionally, in a way that society and capitalism don't necessarily allow you to fully be. And I think that's why that's one of those things that I think you're right. I think Donald Trump would have twice as many people, because when you get people fired up, they're more willing to let go of the kind of like feigned social propriety that we all have to kind of live under all the time. And maybe is one of the reasons why Donald Trump is a compelling figure, because he gives people license to feel how they want to feel, maybe not how they know they should be feeling, and like is giving voice to the kind of id of the American psyche, and people who are like, well, like I was just saying, where they're like, well, I think gay people are fine, or I think, I think transgender people are fine, but man, I love it when this guy fucking talks shit about them. You know what I mean? It's like, well, you might feel that way too then, and that might be something that you need to kind of take a look at. But there's an activation that I think those types of characters are looking to perform for people, and it's effective.
One thing that's very interesting to me, then maybe we can wrap this segment up.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the far right and the far left are definitely a problem.
Oh yeah.
Equally, I think that the far right is kind of scarier because they're knee jerk quicker to like try to make things legislation, and they do effectively control the Supreme Court, and they can like make things hell in Congress in a way that the far left kind of typically doesn't.
Right.
Just like they're so much better at strategizing, it feels like. But both of them are a problem. People on the right, the mainstream figures on the right in politics, are kind of like super willing to go along with the fringes of their party.
Yeah.
Up to this moment,
same with the left though.
Well, this is my. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think this is my read on the situation. Up until now, the big figureheads on the left really don't, I think, go really off the deep end, like way off the deep end on the culture wars things. But I mean, like Elizabeth Warren did, and kind of Kamala Harris kind of does, but it's those people who don't like really, make that much of a difference. And also like the quote unquote like wokeness, like tank their campaigns, back in 2020.
Right.
Whereas Joe Biden like didn't do the wokeness, like Bernie didn't do any wokeness stuff, any like that far lefty wokeness stuff that people complain about. Now this is going to be really interesting if in this race Biden does, because there are signs that he's leaning into more like far lefty culture war stuff just to spite what's happening on the far right, because it's so loud right now that he feels like he has to respond to that. The only way for him to respond is kind of like to parrot far left talking points. That's like my big worry is I feel like if it just like so many people like normies are just like turned off from everybody because all the big ticket names, because they're both just doing extreme shit kind of despite each other. They probably neither of them believe anything they're saying, and they're just being cynical about the whole thing. But they have, I don't know, that worries me a lot, because I do not want Joe Biden or whoever is a Democratic ticket figurehead, I don't want them to become anti-Ron DeSantis in the sense that they just start parroting super far left talking points. That's an ultimate like we failed. That's like our political culture failed if we have only like two extremes taking over the podium. We need someone who's kind of like at least making people in the center still kind of comfortable. I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the left ends up controlling levers of culture in a way that's analog to how the right controls levers in politics. And there is like I think there's a sense I think there's like a sense politically that like people who have extreme voices on the left represent a larger slice of the left demographic than they actually do. I don't think that's true. I think most people that are generally liberally thinking are closer to feeling like Republican light than they are to feeling like extremist, like left, like liberals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Katie Herzog on Blockchain Reporter recently was joking about how she could just see Joe Biden having like a very young like a teenage drag queen like opening up his performances, that sort of thing, and she's like, oh yeah, it's definitely going in that direction.
Fuck yeah.
Oh my god, I hope that's not the case. I hope that's not the case.
I so hope it is. That'd be rad.
Okay, so what's worse, Devin?
God,
Joe Biden having a teenage drag queen open up his performances, or having, I'm not sure what's the parallel here, having
Kyle Rittenhouse
having deep fakes
reading the I Have a Dream speech.
there's a good
Somebody
parallel.
toss that into fucking into an AI generator.
I was trying to have I was trying to have a parallel drawn with like technology and deep fakes. Okay, well, I mean, so what is worse, like the doomsday scenario, doomsday quote unquote, with like deep fakes ruining the election cycle, or the extremes ruining the election cycle? That's the question I was trying to tease out here. Do you like what's worse? But given that both are going to be train wrecks and both are probably going to happen, what do you think is more corrosive to society?
Just extremist politics in general. Yeah, I mean, deepfakes, like, it's entertaining, at least,
Yes.
right?
I'm less scared about the deepfakes, man. I gotta tell you, I'm less scared about the deepfakes than I am the
Yeah.
extremes taking over the. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're laughing, you're already halfway to being reasonable. You know what I mean? Like, if it's crafted well enough that it's gonna make you laugh, you're already kind of far away from extremism. Is serious. There's no jokes
Yeah,
in
that's true.
extremism. Nobody's fucking laughing at the extreme edges. They're way too fucking serious. And if you make a joke about them, it makes them even angrier, which is crazy. I mean, anything that's entertaining is bringing you closer to the center because it's illuminating something that has a fundamental tension built into it, and it's illuminating that tension for you, you know? And like the laughter is the acknowledgement of that, of the absurdity of the tension, you know? And like, yeah, like people on the extreme left and the extreme right can just fuck all the way off, man. Like, it's got to be, who knows? I don't know. Maybe we're coming closer to like an equilibrium as a society where we're going to rely less on social media and media in general to inform our decision-making process. Maybe it's not a terrible thing that people are going off vibe. You know, to me, it's kind of depressing because it, like, I'd love to see politics, the thing that just like, the thing that controls discourse in this country and controls the laws that are being made around people's lives. It would be nice if it was logical and reasonable, but we're not really logical and reasonable as like a species. So I don't know, man. My final point about this, I think, is that it leaves, when we go into an era where entertainment is the thing that is the most valuable about the political experience, we leave room for a Hitler. You know, and Donald Trump is no Hitler, and neither is Ron DeSantis. They're just not charismatic enough. But, and, you know, Donald Trump is really charismatic, but Hitler was like kind of next level, was like Charlie Chaplin level charismatic, well, more so even.
Germany was like hurting, like truly hurting. But
yeah,
America is
in a
actually
desperate,
doing pretty
we're
well.
Killing it.
Yeah.
So
there's enough we don't really have a reason to elect someone extreme at all.
That's
we just got to kind of keep going as we're going, and
course, guys.
Just stay the course.
Go with Sleepy Joe. We're fighting for the soul of America. Come on, guys. Well,
I have one last.
Come on, give me a 1 to 10 on my Joe Biden. I've been trotting this out for 3 episodes now, man. I'm in the coal mines of these impressions.
It's pretty good.
Is it growing?
You know, it's very funny.
Is it growing? Getting better?
When you it is. And when you do your Joe Biden, I am kind of like, oh, because I forget this. I'm like, oh, Joe Biden, he's kind of lovable. You know, like when you do that impression, lovable. I'm like, oh, he is kind of lovable. I kind of forget because I have like this knee jerk. I hate all politicians, but like when you do that, I'm like, oh, he's kind of lovable. You know,
there's nothing wrong with the guy. The thing that frustrates me the most about like the political climate that we're in right now, with where it's like Trump versus Biden, is like I feel like the Republican argument against Joe Biden is like he's a pussy, you know, or something like that, or like he's like weak and ineffectual, and I'm just like, what? Like the he's doing great. Like he hasn't
done so much, way beyond my expectations.
So much done, first of all, and like nothing that I don't even think like a fastidiously right-wing person would be able to be like outraged about. Like there's hella manufactured outrage. The only thing that I can look at is the pulling out of Iraq. That was rough.
Afghanistan.
That was rough. That'll be a little bit of like a little bit of soot on his legacy. But like that's
but everybody wanted him to. Everybody wanted him to.
And it was
going to be a shit show.
And it's like and also what I love has been borne out over the last couple of years. Everybody was like, dude, we left the Taliban with all this military equipment, and then like cue blooper reel of like fucking Taliban dudes like crashing Black Hawk helicopters and fucking like running out of gas and like AMRAPs and shit. I'm like, yeah, there's nothing to be too worried about here, guys.
Well, I guess I have one more note here, just because it's, if I don't say it now, I never will. I took a week off Twitter.
Okay.
And because I was just curious I was just sick of it and a lot of things. I was curious, like, if I was going to be dying to get back on, to like jump back into the whole, like, not that I post a lot or whatever, but it's a thing that I scroll through pretty regularly. 1 week off. And it's like, in a sense, I'm like cured. I just don't find it enjoyable. I'm sick of seeing the same names that you see every time you hop on.
Yeah.
And everyone just seems like, now that I've just stepped away just a teeny bit, everyone is just like LARPing being a clever Twitter person. That was just fascinating to me because I didn't expect that. And it's hopeful for me, but also the world, that we think that social media is such a problem. We didn't talk about this, but like there was a big report this week about how social media is again like so bad for young brains and this sort of thing in the way that we didn't even know and all this shit. Man, it's like not that hard to kind of like unaddict yourself from, based on my experience. It's like all you need is just maybe cold turkey for a week, guys. If you're out there and you're like you're glued to your phone or you're worried about your kids being too glued, just institute a week break. And I think it's actually kind of like, social media kind of sucks. Like I kind of like it, but it also kind of sucks. And you realize that with just based on my experience, again, just like a little break, and you're like, whoa, maybe this is just like easier to set down than I ever thought. So anyway, those are my 2 cents on social media.
My 2 cents on that is that my personal ethic now around social media is that it's not a vehicle for creative expression anymore. It's a marketing tool.
Yeah,
that's like plain and simple. Dude. And it's like, and for
that's
us,
the only
it's
reason
useful.
why I use Twitter too. Is like I write an article, I need some place to post it. That's the only 100%. Thing I will like regularly use it for now.
And that is a healthy relationship to it, because as a creative professional, like, you need marketing tools, and it's a great marketing tool. Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter are great marketing tools. They're too exploitative of your personal data and your creativity to actually use them as like a creative outlet. So my final, my last little fucking free throw, as the buzzer goes. Hilarious, the Ron DeSantis, Elon Musk Twitter meltdown. I can't stand Elon Musk anymore. I can't believe I ever liked the guy. He seems like a total dipshit and kind of a dweeb, and like, fuck that guy. Like, he's just too, like, he's too much of a contrarian, where he's like, oh, everybody hates it when I do this, and it's just like, fuck off, dude. Go back in the shadows and keep developing dope technology. Other final thing is the billionaire that's harvesting his son's blood. So like, we have reached the pinnacle of insane culture now, where this is not like a conspiracy theory that like powerful people are like using blood boys. This is a fucking news article where this guy is like fully on social media being like, so I use my son as a blood boy, and everybody's like, that's so wild. I'm like, dude, what? This is fucking insane, guys. Like, wake up, sheeple. Like, also, where do I get a blood boy? Oh yeah, but
good times. Gonna be a lot of fun up ahead. Hey,
that's right.
As always, thanks, Devin. We'll talk soon.
All right, later, buddy.